India's spending on research and development or R&D is one of the lowest in the world. This is what the government's top public policy think tank, Niti Aayog, had said in its 2021 report. A study conducted by Niti Aayog, an institute for competitiveness, had found that India's gross expenditure on research and development or GERD is at a mere 0.7% of GDP. The report suggests that GERD should be at least 2% of GDP for India to become a $5 trillion economy. The report highlighted the importance of the role of the private sector in R&D growth. R&D in countries such as the USA, South Korea, and Germany are led by the private sector. So why is the private sector's expenditure in R&D in India so low?
It is true that Indian companies, the R&D spend is lower than several developed countries. I think it is largely a function of the size of these companies, the low profitability that they have compared to their peers abroad, and also a function of the fact that we are at a stage of evolution where we are still at contract manufacturing, or in the case of electronics, at electronic manufacturing services, and not really product development as yet.
India is the world's fifth largest economy, but in R&D investments, it is ranked 16th. India's R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP is just 0.6%. China spends 2.4% of its GDP on R&D, while Japan spends 3.2% and Germany 3.1%. Naushad Forbes, co-chairman of Forbes Marshall, recently argued that while companies across the world invest 1.5% of GDP on in-house R&D, Indian companies invest a meager 0.3% of GDP. Total investments in R&D is a whopping $2 trillion. However, almost 3/4 or 75% of this investment goes in just 5 sectors: pharmaceuticals, automobiles, technology hardware, software, and electronics. Out of all the sectors in India which carry out R&D expenditure, firms in the pharmaceutical sector are the highest in number. So, what Indian companies are losing by not investing in R&D?
It is obvious that if we are to aim at a more sustainable, a more profitable business, R&D innovation plays an extremely important role. Having said that, the definition of R&D and capturing all improvements, even Kaizen activities for that matter, or product adaptations, design adaptations into the R&D is not always done. And hence, sometimes I do feel that we do not reflect correctly our R&D expenditure.
Recently, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, the founder of Biocon Biologics, said in an interview to Business Standard that the company saw a huge jump in R&D expenditure. In fact, Shaw went on to say that the ratio of R&D expenditure and revenue was something Biocon is not comfortable with. The ideal scenario, according to her, would be to cap R&D expense at 12% of revenue. While Biocon may try to reduce its R&D expenditure, India Inc. overall spends only a fraction of its revenue in R&D. India is home to big IT firms. However, R&D expenditure is limited to a mere 1% of revenue, while Chinese companies spend 8% of revenue for R&D. So, what can we do to boost R&D expenditure of India Inc.?
The collaboration between the government, industry, and the academia is not seamless. It can be made better. There are not enough industries setting up R&D centers in institutions. Enough amount of money or the budget is not spent on skilling the youngsters. More and more academic interventions or industry interventions in academia is essential. So that is what I felt. That is what I'm talking about. And looking at maybe in institutions that are specialized and subject matter experts in different spaces, not only in technology like IITs or other engineering institutions.
Despite being the fifth largest economy, India Inc. still has a long way to go beyond offering manufacturing services and contract manufacturing. Unlike Germany, China, and Japan, the country also lacks enough investment in academia, one of the key drivers of innovation. In this backdrop, the way ahead for the private sector is to increase its R&D expenditure and more collaborations with governments and academia.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views, and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, and LinkedIn.